the neuroscience of mindfulness. All mammals have a limbic system, basically. The limbic system controls emotions and motivations from down deep, deep, deep inside the brain. The key player here is the amygdala. And you've probably heard the word before. Maybe you know what it is, maybe you don't. You can see by the diagram where it is. But basically, everything that happens passes through the amygdala, okay? Now, this is your brain on stress. Basically, has anybody ever had a panic attack? When something happens, the amygdala thinks that you are in danger, okay? So it's triggering a fight, flight, or freeze response in order to protect you because it thinks that something is going to happen to you, that you're gonna be physically harmed. And that's the reason, this is like the most primitive part of your brain, right? This is what all animals basically have, this limbic system. It's so that we can survive. It's very, very important, actually. The problem is that often the amygdala is wrong, that it deems something as a threat to your safety when it actually is not a threat to your safety at all. And that's what happens when you have a panic attack. Panic attack happens when there isn't an immediate threat. Your amygdala is sending messages that there is an immediate threat. So you feel like, just like any animal out in the wild, you feel like you need to run, hide, or fight, basically. So if you're wondering why it's so awful having a panic attack, that's why, because your brain is saying, I'm about to die, you need to run for your life or fight for your life. Okay, so what I want you to do is imagine that imagine a clear bottle, like a clear plastic bottle filled with sand and water. And basically, just move this out of the way. So a clear plastic bottle filled with sand and water. If you shake up that bottle, that's what the amygdala does when it thinks that you are under stress, okay? It scatters all of the information. And that's why you feel so crazed and you can't think clearly. The sand, as the sand settles down to the bottom of that bottle, that is your mind calming, okay? So just remember that image in your head. The next time that you're triggering that fight, flight, or freeze response, that's basically what's happening in your brain, is everything's being shook around, nothing is firing in the right places. And I'm gonna show you another slide that should explain it a little bit better. So the amygdala, like I said, it's super, super important. You need to feel fear sometimes, and it's gonna help you to survive, right? So it's basically to perceive danger so that you know when something is going to possibly harm you, right? And the reason that I have, side note, the reason that I have Alex Hanold on this, and I might be mispronouncing his name, he's, I'm told, one of the most famous living rock climbers, but he was the first to scale the rock in Yosemite, what's it called? Capitan, no, it wasn't Capitan. The Half Dome, maybe that is part of Capitan, but it's over 1,800 feet. He was the first to scale it with and without a rope. So he scaled that with no rope. And this is, I mean, I'm trying to wrap my brain around it. It's kind of difficult to just imagine how terrifying that is. But basically, just to give you an idea, if he had fallen, it would have taken him 10 seconds to land. That's how high up it is. And he was able, the point is, he was able to climb to the top with no ropes. And brain researchers were fascinated by him because they were wondering what's happening with his amygdala. Why is his amygdala not telling him that this is dangerous and he might fall to his death? So they actually studied his brain, and they compared his responses with other people's responses with what they considered normal brains. His amygdala does not fire. So it actually doesn't, there was no activity in his brain compared to other people's brains. So the amygdala is actually super, super important and guides our behavior a lot. This man basically does not have fear. It's fascinating, right? So if you don't have your amygdala, or if your amygdala is disabled, you are fearless without it. That's how essential it is. And they've done, just as a side note, they've done a ton of different experiments where the amygdala is removed or deactivated in animals. I know, testing on animals, or experiments on animals, and the animal, as a result, has no fear. Okay? So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to do a ton of different activities that are going to help to deactivate that amygdala so that you can think clearly. Okay, so second thing. So when your amygdala is perceiving something as danger, it's going to elicit a fight, flight, or freeze response to help you to survive, increase the chances of you surviving. And that's why it's the most primitive form of your brain. It's also the part of your brain that develops first when you're in the womb. After that, so if it does not elicit a fight, flight, or freeze response, what it does then is it feeds information to the prefrontal cortex, only if it's considering that the information is not going to harm you. And I'll show you in a second what happens if that's the case. So what I want you to think right now is just, I'm going to take a little break because I do a lot of talking, and I'm very, very sorry. What I want you to just, this is a thinking job. I want to hear your responses. What can in what way can our amygdala help us? And in what way can our amygdala harm us? And I want to hear your response. Let's take about a minute for this.